What's up guys, what's going on? My name is Hiroshi from WebStylePress.com. Welcome to another video. If this is your first time here, we share software engineering tutorials on this channel. If you want to learn and grow in this area, join us by hitting subscribe button and bell icon. In this tutorial, we are tinkering with the React state. We will create a simple counter and increment its value each time when a button is clicked. And then maybe we will add more stuff to the state. This is my simple React tab, just the basic configuration of a React tab, and this is the display. So it is a class-based component, extending component from React, and I have linked to it a regular CSS file. I am just styling the button, and this is my component. This is render method and it is returning this code. This is JSX, not HTML. It's looking like the HTML, but this is not HTML. This is JSX code. As React states, official doc states that JSX is extension to JavaScript, and it comes with the full power of JavaScript. So what I want to do is I want to create a button, and then I want to create a counter, and I want to increment that counter. So let's create a button. So you will create a button by just using the tag button, and in the button just let's write counter. So this is my counter. Let's show a value of this counter, and we will use the value of counter in this state. So let's create this state for this app. Constructor props super props. So here we will declare our state, this dot state. So our state has got a counter and its value is 0. This is our state, and in our state we have got a property counter, and the value of this counter is 0. So let's display this 0 inside our button. We execute code in ReactJS apps by using these curly braces. These tags that are looking like HTML will render the HTML code, and these braces will execute the code. So I want to display this value, counter's value, inside this button. So what I will write is, because this is the class-based component, so I will use this dot state dot counter. Okay, so this is displaying 0 inside the button. Let's use deprecated tags of bold. Let's make this counter bold, value of this counter bold. All right, let's increment it now. I will add a on click handler on for this button. On click, this dot, and here will be my function that will increment the counter. So the naming should be good, the naming should make sense. So I will use the do increment. This is my function. So I will use this here again, because this is the class-based component. So if it is the class-based component, you have to use this Okay, so now let's write this function. We write our functions inside the class-based component before the render method. So do increment is equal to this thing. So here will be increment counter. So here will be the logic. Let's apply the logic. So this dot set state. So I want to set this state. So I want to increment this counter. So I will write it here, counter this dot state dot counter plus 1. As simple as that. Okay, now if I click this button, the value is being incremented. So we have successfully created our counter. Okay, so far so good. Let me refactor this code a little bit. Okay, I am happy with it. Now let's add something more to this state. Maybe date and time. So let's add a comma, and this is our new property here, date, new date. Let's display this date in our front end view. This is button right here. We will display this date here. So this dot, again, this I am using this because this is the class based component. This dot state dot date, I am accessing this date property from my state. This dot state dot date. So this is the error here, which says objects are not valid as a React child. So it turns out that new date is an object and it won't be displayed straight away inside JSX. JSX won't render the object. Okay, so let's convert this object into string. So we will write dot to string. Save. So now this is being displayed. Let me refactor it a bit again. So I will use a break tag here. BR tag. So this is BR tag, and this is the date, time. I want to make it bold. This is the title, so it should be bold, and I will use again BR tag here, and here it is, date and time, and this is our date and time. You can display this time and date in multiple ways. Let's see. Date time to string to local string say this, and maybe let's separate date and time. So date let's separate date to local date string. So this is the date, and similarly time to local time string. So this is our time, date, time, and this is a kind of proper way to display the date and time, and this is the long everything in the time and date. So why it is like that? Why JSX did not display the date and time when I used this, when I tried to use this new date straight away, this object, date object. I mean, we can display this, we can use this new date inside plain old JavaScript. So are we not using JavaScript context by wrapping the code in curly braces? These curly braces, we are just executing the code, and this is the JavaScript. So why this new date did not display the time and date? Well, we are using JavaScript, but new date is an object, and a web browser does not know how to render objects. However, a web browser does know how to render strings. That is why we converted date object to string before giving it to JSX to process. And so by these methods, date and time will be displayed, as you can see here. So our counter is being incremented. I want to update this date as well, and I also want a way to reset this counter. So first let's reset this counter to 0. Let's create another button that will reset this counter. Okay, so this is our button, and let's add a break below this button and create another button, and this time on click this dot reset counter. This is function name. We are creating another function by name of reset counter. We do not need to display this counter again in this second button because we already have it displayed inside first button. Okay, so we need a button title here, reset counter. Okay, so this button should reset this counter. Okay, so our function name is reset counter. Let's create this function again here. This is our first function to increment counter. Increment counter, and here we will create another function, and that is the reset counter is equal to arrow function and reset counter logic increment counter logic here. Okay, so let's add this logic. We want to reset the counter, so that is simple. Again, we will access the state of the value of the counter from the state. So this dot set state, again we are setting the state again for the counter 0. Simple. Counter, it is counting up, and reset counter will reset it. Okay, and you can use any value, let's say 10 for this reset counter, and let's increment it, and reset counter, it goes to 10, and reset counter again goes to 10, reset counter again goes to 10. So let's move it back to 0. So our reset counter is working. Now let's decrement it. This is incrementing counter, and let's decrement it. So this was our button for the increment. Let's decrement it. So another button, on click, this dot do decrement. We will create another function, and we need title, but we do not need the value inside this button again. And this is the title. Let's change this title to decrement, that is minus, and this should be counter increment. Let's make it more descriptive. Okay, this is increment and this should be decrement. Let's add a break between these two buttons. Okay, increment. Let's add logic for this decrement button. So our function for the decrement, this is our decrement. So our function for the decrement is do decrement. Let's create this function. This was do increment, this is do decrement. All right, again access the value in the state. This dot set state. Okay, counter, just name the value that is inside the state, and now we will decrement it. Again, first access the value, this dot state dot point to that value, that is the counter, and -1. Okay, now if you will press the minus, it will go down to minus value, and if you will do the increment, if you will press the increment button, it will just go up, and this will reset the counter. Minus plus counter, reset counter. Clear? So our counter increment is working, our decrement is working, our reset counter is working. Now let's change these dates. I mean, let's click somewhere. Let's create a function to just update the date according to the current date and time. Okay, another button, and that button should say update date, and we will create a function with the name of update date in camel case. By using this, because we are inside a class based function, or class based component. Okay, let's create this function now. Update date. This is also pretty much straightforward. So this dot set state, we are again setting this state, changing this state, and we will point to this date property inside this state object. This is our state. Our state contains two properties, counter and date, and the value for counter was 0 from the beginning, and the date just contained new date object, but the date was not updating. So we are going to update the date now, date and time now. Okay, we will just add this new date inside this. We will first access the date inside the set state, and we will just we'll call this new date method again. So let's see. Okay, so this is our update date button. So when we will click at it, something is getting updated inside this. Let's see these seconds. Update date. Okay, so plus increment, decrement, reset counter, update date. So these are working. You can also, if you don't need multiple functions to do each and everything, you can just use this thing inside with the, let's say, increment as well. This is our function that is incrementing our counter. So if I want to update the date while it will be triggered, I can just use that statement with this statement that is already there in this function. Okay, I will use this comma, and I will place the second statement below the first statement. So first statement is incrementing the counter, and the second statement is updating new date. So now this do increment function is doing two things by using two statements. First statement is is updating counter, and the second statement is updating date inside this state. So let's try it. So decrement will just decrement the counter. We applied these two things inside the do increment function. So let's try this. So by clicking do increment, counter increment button, both of our functionalities are being performed. Whole state is being updated, and our state is just the small state containing just the counter and the date, and both are working. We are changing our state. We are changing two properties from our state by using one function. All right, so we have created the increment function and decrement function for our counter, and we have created logic to reset our counter, and we have created a logic to update our date. And we know by now that new date is an object and won't work straight away in JSX, and we have to use some other method to convert that object into string and then that string will be displayed in JSX. So again, let me quickly go through this code and describe what is going on in this component again. So when this button is clicked, when for this counter, when this button is clicked, we are using a handler on click, or event handler on click for this button, and we have used a function name inside it, and we have defined this function here, do increment, and whenever I click at this button, this function gets triggered, and this function has got a logic to update the state. So when our state here gets updated, our component gets re-rendered. This render method gets called again, and it re-renders our front end part and displays the changes that have been done in this state. So values of updated state reflect in the front end. So class-based component, extending component, and constructor. In constructor we define our properties and state, and after that, outside the constructor, for class-based component, we place our functions here before render, and be careful about writing anything in between render and return. Whatever you will write here in between render and return will be executed each time the component will be reloaded. If the component will be reloaded, if the component will be re-rendered, this thing that you will place here will be called again and again. So be careful about writing anything inside render and return. And these functions are triggered on demand, kind of on demand, like we are triggering those functions by using on click event handler here. So what else? Yeah, I hope you liked the video. If we missed anything, or you have something to add or share, comment down below. Ask questions related to this topic. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe to the channel and hit bell icon and to receive channel updates. Join us on social media. Links are in the description. Stay tuned for more updates, and I will see you in the next video.